Somewhere right now, a licensed real estate agent is sitting in front of a laptop, clicking through slides on a website that hasn't been redesigned since smartphones first appeared. A monotone narrator reads text verbatim off the screen. Every few minutes, a quiz pops up, one so simple it can be answered without having listened to a single word of the previous section. At the end, a certificate generates automatically. Nothing about the last several hours made that agent better at their job. But in the eyes of the state, they are now compliant, and their license remains active for another renewal cycle. This scene plays out for roughly 1.5 million licensed real estate agents across the United States. Nearly every state requires these agents to complete between 18 and 45 hours of continuing education every 1 to 2 years, just to keep their license valid. This is a massive, quiet economy, generating hundreds of millions of dollars annually by prioritizing mandatory compliance over genuine professional skill. If this mandatory training actually improved professional competency, we would expect these hours to correlate with career success. Instead, the real estate industry has one of the most severe early career attrition rates in America. Industry data shows that between 85 and 90% of newly licensed agents leave the profession entirely within 5 years. Annual surveys reveal that a large share of these agents earn only a few $1,000s in their first 2 years, making less than $10,000 annually from real estate commissions. The system mandates hours of paid coursework on a population that, statistically, is unlikely to survive until their next license renewal. This failure rate highlights a disconnect between training required by law and skills required for survival. Top-producing brokers who make it past that 5-year window rarely attribute their success to state-mandated courses. Successful agents point to lead generation, digital marketing, and negotiation psychology. Meanwhile, state curriculums focus on fair housing statutes and agency disclosure laws, material that is important to learn once, but is repackaged and retested every single cycle. Agents are not failing because they lack knowledge of statutory disclosure rules. They are failing because the mandated curriculum ignores how to actually build a business. Multiple states certify online courses where an agent leaves a video playing in a background tab while working, returning only to click an obvious quiz. If the primary goal were to improve agent competency, a system this easy to passively bypass would be a total design failure. However, the system succeeds perfectly if the actual goal is generating a compliance paper trail and a recurring revenue stream for course providers. The system is controlled by state real estate commissions and professional licensing boards. These bodies decide the hours required and which private companies are allowed to sell that education. This creates a captive consumer market. Because the law mandates these courses as a condition of employment, real estate agents cannot walk away. They are forced to pay an approved vendor to keep their income legal. In this environment, education providers do not need to compete on quality or modern training. They compete on offering the legal bare minimum at the lowest production cost because their sales are legally guaranteed by the state. This regulatory framework functions as a bureaucratic moat, shielding these approved vendors from the competitive pressure of a free market. Mandatory education has become a recurring compliance tax paid by working professionals to state-protected private corporations. We have a system where survival skills are ignored, over 1 million professionals are legally forced to pay, and outdated vendors are protected by a regulatory moat. Even as agents report these courses provide little value, the mandated hours continue to grow. The persistence of this system points to the relationship between private education corporations and the state boards that regulate them. This alliance generates a massive state-enforced revenue stream for approved vendors, sustained by the very boards responsible for oversight. This multi-million-dollar alliance ensures a constant flow of capital from working agents into private hands, functioning as a mandatory revenue stream dressed up in the language of consumer protection. Who exactly benefits from keeping this multi-million-dollar compliance machine alive, largely unchanged, decade after decade? And why, when agents constantly complain about the uselessness of these courses, do the mandated hours never shrink but only continue to grow? The answer sits inside an alliance between private education corporations and state boards. In most states, the rulemaking process directly invites input from industry stakeholders, including the very companies that profit from selling the mandatory education. This is an economic pattern known as regulatory capture. While working agents are busy trying to close deals and pay bills, The companies profiting from their compliance hours have dedicated staff and formal lobbying relationships built specifically to protect that requirement. It is what happens when one side of a regulatory debate is a fragmented group of busy small business owners, and the other side is a small number of well-organized companies. The resulting structure functions less like independent government oversight and more like a legally enforced billion-dollar pay-to-play cartel. Look at the training top-producing brokers credit with their survival, and a strikingly different curriculum emerges. They point to lead generation systems, mastering local digital marketing, advanced negotiation psychology, and disciplined financial planning to survive unpredictable commission cycles. This does not mean legal and ethical compliance training is worthless. Fair housing laws exist because of a genuinely dark history of discrimination in America, and agents must understand them thoroughly. Agency disclosure rules also play a critical role. They establish clear ethical boundaries and protect everyday families from facing real financial harm. The problem is the massive imbalance. Weighting the mandatory system overwhelmingly toward repetitive legal review ignores the exact business skills correlated with an agent's financial survival and career stability. This brings us to a policy debate with no simple answer. Some economists argue for a radical position: abolish mandatory continuing education entirely. They argue that if a state mandate primarily functions as a compliance tax benefiting private course mills, the evidence-based response is to remove it and let open market competition dictate training. Others argue for aggressive reform. They suggest overhauling the curriculum to focus on modern digital transactions, practical business skills, and true competency verification. In their view, because real estate involves life-altering financial sums for families, a baseline standard of verified education remains necessary. If you are a licensed agent watching this right now, has a mandatory course ever directly helped you close a deal or grow your career? Or has it simply been a recurring legal toll you had to pay to keep your license active? Determining whether to overhaul and deregulate or strictly oversee this industry remains a massive unresolved dilemma for regulators and professionals alike. Real estate continuing education, as it exists today, is a compliance tax built on regulatory inertia. It is paid disproportionately by agents facing the steepest financial odds in any licensed profession, while the actual business skills needed to survive receive almost no mandatory focus. This pattern repeats across dozens of licensed professions in America. Over the decades, the line between consumer protection and industry gatekeeping has quietly blurred. If this kind of hidden regulatory and financial breakdown gives you a new perspective on modern business systems, that is exactly what we analyze every single week on this channel. Hit like, subscribe for more investigative deep dives, and drop a comment below telling us where you stand.